Hi, this is Ibarian from the Candid Frame, and today I wanted to talk about making the extraordinary from the ordinary. I've got a lot of things that I've been busy with recently, and most of it involves me being here in the office and working on projects, writing articles, writing a book, doing some research, and just running the basic mechanics of what is my business here. And so I've been struggling with going out and making photographs. Even though I have these great cameras in my office here, I'm finding that I'm not really making much time to go out and shoot, which is something that I'm hoping to change. Now, I get inspired a lot by the many photographs that I see. When I get to interview a photographer, I'm often doing a good amount of research, not only on them, but photographers in their genre, just to get a sense of their work and how they fit in the overall genre. And I look at those pictures, and of course I get excited and I get thrilled just because I get excited about looking at great photographs. But one of the things that really sort of gets me out of the house is when I see people making photographs of ordinary subject matter and making something really amazing and special with it. When I see a photographer doing some amazing work in Paris or in Budapest, or, I'm not going to be able to get on a plane tomorrow and travel there to make those kinds of photographs. But, I can walk out of my front door or walk into my backyard and I can start looking at the world just a little differently and see if I can make something exceptional even without getting into my car. Or if I do get in my car, not having to travel, 100 miles away, maybe it's just like 2 or 3 miles away. There's subject matter everywhere, and the photographers and the work I want to showcase today are, I think, really good examples of people who take really ordinary, mundane subject matter, and because of the way they use the camera, the way they use light, the way they use the composition, because they use these things in a particular way, they're able to take something and really make it something that you enjoy looking at. So many photographs that we look at during the course of the day deserve nothing more than a cursory glance, but I think that the pictures that I'm going to show you today really demand your attention for more than just a couple of seconds. And most importantly, I hope it will inspire you to think about the world that you're inhabiting right now. And if you're struggling like me with making time to go out and shoot and make photographs, I think a lot of these pictures are going to make you think about picking up the camera, whether it's your camera phone or whether it's your SLR, whatever it is you make pictures with, and make you eager and excited about going out and making some photographs. I want to start with this image by Nasir Hamid. It's of a bench somewhere. I don't see any location here. But how many benches, how many chairs, how many couches do we see during the course of the day? And we don't think of them beyond their function. They're meant for people to sit in, to rest in. We often don't think of them as being, fodder for a great photograph. But I think Nasir succeeds in making a really good photograph because he takes it beyond what its function is. By using a low perspective, by choosing the position of the camera relative to the subject, using the limited depth of field, he's able to call attention to the elements that makes this bench a bench. In this case, the rods that serve as the length of the seating area. There's a pole that in which all of this is supported. You have these repeating circles, which are the ends of the rods, and all of this creates a wonderful repetition of shape and pattern. You also have gradations of tone from really bright highlights to dark shadow. So as a black and white picture, it's exploring that as well. But the picture transforms an ordinary subject into something extraordinary. And for me, this is exciting because it really pushes my way of seeing every time I see a photographer do something like this. We are so accustomed to looking at everything around us literally and thinking about its function that we don't think about what it can look like visually within the context of a frame, within the context of a photograph. For this next shot, this is a little scene outdoors, and we have what seems to be like a weed and a web, a lone web that's being stretched at the tip of this weed down to the lower right hand corner of the frame. And it's it's a beautiful shot. But again, it's one of those things that are probably around us all the time. And scenes like this we usually are not paying particular attention to because all this stuff is usually happening below our knees. We're all so concerned with stuff that's on at about eye level or chest level that a lot of the things that are sort of low to the ground we're not really paying any attention to unless it's something we're trying to avoid stepping on or tripping over. And I just love the shot because it's so simple. So you got some sort of growth, a weed, and you have this web that's being stretched around here, and then you have this sort of arc that's happening as part of that web. So it looks like it may have been the remnant of a web, or one that was just being constructed by a spider. I'm not sure, but it's how he uses the light that's coming from behind it to reveal its presence there, because it's the backlighting that makes it stand out. It becomes the brightest element in the frame and really calls attention to the graphic nature of not only the web itself, but every other element in the photograph. Like the previous shot, he's using a shallow depth of field to call our attention to a specific part of this image. And it just works very effectively. The blurred background, the nice bokeh that you get from the lens, all of it is meant to draw our attention to this one almost insignificant part of our world that existed probably only for a few hours, if that. But he's able to make me look at this world and make me think about, there's stuff like this all around me every day. If I walked into my backyard, I probably would find something like this, but I never take the time to see it. And yet in this photograph, he reveals not only this particular scene to me, but it makes me aware of that there is so much around me that is invisible, not because it's not visible to my naked eyes, just because I'm not bothering to see it. So it's pictures like this that really kind of shake things up in my head and force me to think about, what else am I not seeing that's so obvious, that's right in front of my nose, just because I'm filtering it through this objectification of everything that I see and witness. So here's another shot by Zemowit Maj. You're gonna have to email me if you're watching this to tell me how to pronounce your name, because of all people I should be better at it, but I have to admit I'm pretty terrible. But here's what is this? Look at it. It's a note on a car that's left in a place that's been really cold to the point that the ice has developed on the windshield and on the body of the car. I'm in Southern California, so I'm unfortunately not or fortunately, not enduring the kind of weather that the rest of the country is. So this is probably an everyday event for people at this time of year. But look what he does with this photograph. The texture of the ice on the windshield and on the shape of the car are really, really interesting to me. But it's also all the lines and the shape that exist within the image. I mean, this long, strong diagonal line that's coming in here, the lines that come here from the edges of the hood of the car, from the body of the car, all leading us here to where this sign is, or where this message was left on the windshield. Graphically, it's just a wonderful shot, and you have texture, you have color, and then you have that little note that adds a little something to it. Usually, I try to avoid having words in my photographs, because it's probably one of the first things that people do is they try to read what that is in there. And but you read it here and it gives you sort of a context for what the story is behind the picture. But I think it's something that how many people will have walked past this and never thought of making a photograph? Yeah, they probably may have stopped to see what the sign was all about, what the message was, but to make a photograph of it, I don't think most people would do that. But to make a photograph that is as good as this one is, I just love to look at it. Even after reading the message on there, I just take a step back and I take a look at that photograph, and I just love it. I just love it. And I think that the shot in and of itself without the note would still be a really graphic, interesting shot, but I think the note really makes the shot. It seems like our eyes are being led to this area of of the frame anyway. And if there wasn't there, it would just be a sort of an exploration of tone and texture and color and so on and so forth. But the presence of the sign adds a story element to the entire photograph. You start thinking about, whose car is it? Why was it left there? Who left the message? So on and so forth. And again, it's starting from a very simple premise. There's a car covered in ice that's been sitting there for a while, and all of a sudden it becomes something really special in terms of what a photographer does with their camera. It's a fun shot. It's great. I think it would make a great print. It just has everything that I like in a photograph. Okay, here's something I often respond to, which is light. I mean, I wrote a book on the subject, but this is a scene that could be anywhere. It's a sidewalk. You have fallen leaves. You got trees in the background. You have a fence, but it's the light of either the early morning or the late afternoon that is cutting across the scene and calling attention to particular parts of the ground, the wall, the green leaves in the background. And I look at this and I get excited. I get excited because, wow, it's a great quality of light, but it's also the play of light between shadow. But again, it's about, wow, if I walk around the block in my neighborhood, I'm bound to find something like this. Maybe not exactly like this with respect to the quality of the light, because right now it's about 10 o'clock, and the sun is pretty high and relatively high in the horizon right now, so I wouldn't probably get this dramatic shadow. But nevertheless, this kind of stuff takes an ordinary scene and makes us really experience it completely differently. If you look at it, you go, it's a sidewalk, it's a fence, it's a tree, it's leaves, but it's so much more than that. And the tool that Georgios Karamanos uses to great effect is really light, the power of light. It's not so much the camera he's using or the lens he's using or anything about that. It's about him seeing this ordinary scene and realizing that the light is making it something extraordinary, and then using that tool in his hand to sort of capture it. I'm always walking my dogs, and I'm always looking for light like this to help reveal the things that are around in my neighborhood in a very special way, in a way that gets me excited, in a way that takes it out of the context of, oh, this is just another Southern California neighborhood. And you no doubt have something similar to this where you are. But have you ever left really early in the morning, in the very late afternoon, and just taken a walk and just see how light transforms your experience? I mean, this image was shot in Sweden, but it could have been shot here in Pasadena for all I know. The fact is that this stuff is everywhere, and you don't have to travel very far in order to make a great photograph. Here's some chairs and some tables in a courtyard in some business district. This is a photograph by John Williams in Freedom Park in Rosslyn, Virginia. And how ordinary is this? You have in these business parks or in these different office buildings, you'll have areas where people can go out and have lunch or smoke, and do whatever. And they're surrounded by, what could be more boring, office buildings. But John takes this shot and he just uses all the graphic elements that have been created by the architects who have created these environments for us, and he takes it and he goes, okay, I'm going to use this to make a photograph of something that I know that most people who sit here would never consider doing, making a photograph of the space. And even though there aren't any people in there, you get a hint of the presence of people because of the presence of the tables, the garbage can, which is kind of cool. A lot of this is inferred in there. You don't even see people in the windows in the background, but they're there somewhere. And I can imagine that this might have been taken like during a lunch break, because it looks like it was probably around noon, guessing from how the shadow is falling below the tables over there, or a little afternoon or something like that. So this was a shot that probably was taken during a break. And I like imagining that this photo was taken during a break, because again, it's an example of just making photographs wherever and whenever you are, and not having to have some sort of special occasion in order to make a really good photograph. It's about just flipping that switch in your brain and saying, okay, how can I see the world differently right now? And doing it. Just wonderful, wonderful photograph. And here's a shot by James Dias Davidson. And how ordinary is this? A clock on a shelf. I know these days that, we usually don't have clocks on shelves anymore. We're always referring to our smartphones to check out the time. But I like the simplicity of this image. I mean, I like the simplicity of almost all the images that I'm choosing today. But how ordinary is this? It's just a clock sitting on a shelf. Granted, it's a sort of old, classic-looking clock, and it looks like it's in an environment where it's not completely modern. And look at the wall itself. It seems like it has um, some aging happening in terms of the paint immediately behind the clock to the left and the right, and it seems to be a little cleaner up above. And you can just look at the edge of the shelf. It looks like this sort of an older environment, like a home that someone has lived in for a very, very long time. But again, look at how I'm carefully observing the photograph and taking away all of those bits of information from what? A picture of a clock on a shelf. Yeah, it is that, but it's so much more, because the simplicity of the composition, the color, the texture, all of this is making me look at it more and more carefully. It's really drawing me in, and it's making me ask the question of a story. One of the early images I talked about, how story is evoked by just the presence of that message on that note on the car. But here, there's no written note or anything. I'm just taking a look at the evidence that's being revealed to my eye about the space, and it makes me curious. Whose house is this? Whose apartment is this? They must have lived there for a very long time. Are they alive? Is it a grandparent? Who exactly is it? What's the story behind the photograph? And I have families and friends that I visit sometimes, and sometimes I visit people who are elderly, and they've lived in their space and they've inhabited their space for so long that some of the things on their shelves and on their bookshelves and in their kitchens have been there for years, if not decades. And those things have sort of taken a presence of their own within that space. And those can end up making really great photographs. Do I think of making photographs, when I visit them? No. But when I take a look at this photograph, it makes me think, maybe I should pull out my camera after getting permission, probably. But think about, what can I make a picture of in an environment like this that tells something about the person even without revealing them? This gives me the spark of an idea, even though it's as simple an image as you can imagine. And here's this last image by Mario Trar. And I have no idea what this is. I was taking a look at the photograph and trying to figure out whether this was like sunglasses, because we're getting some sort of reflection, but it looks like it's some sort of coiled thing that's rising up from the bottom of the frame and up that may have some sort of reflective surfaces. I don't know what it is, but the fact is it really doesn't matter, because again, it's a fun image because of the color, the shape, the limited depth of field, and how that shallow depth of field really calls attention to what's being reflected, which seems to be like the edge of a container or a fence. Again, I don't know what it is, but it's the kind of image that makes me stop and makes me think about, yeah, what is it? But then I'm going, even if I don't know what it is, even if I never find out what it is, I still enjoy looking at the photograph. I love the color, the shape, the pattern, the composition, all of that stuff. It just makes for a fun photograph. And this is probably one of the most ordinary subjects or objects, that you could probably imagine, but just because he was paying attention to the small little details that he got that inspiration of, wow, this might make a good photograph. And he had the camera with him in order to make the picture. I think it's just kind of cool when photographers are able to do that, whether it's me or whether it's somebody else. It's like, hey, there is so much around us to photograph. There are so many exciting things to photograph, and sometimes we don't even have to walk out of our own home to find it. After taking a look at these photographs, it really gets me inspired about picking up my camera later on today after I take care of some of the things on my to-do list and just make the time to go out for a half an hour or an hour and just see if I can make something extraordinary from the ordinary. These photographs really get me pumped up, and I hope it does the same for you, especially if you've been frustrated with your inability to go out and make photographs on a regular basis. Um, this is one of the reasons I really love this Flickr pool, because there's no shortage of inspiration from just ordinary photographers. I love interviewing these master photographers that I get the opportunity to interview on the Candid Frame every week, but it's people like you that really keep me invigorated in terms of my own photography. So if you are watching this and not a member of the Candid Frame Flickr pool, please join us and start submitting your photographs. We'll be doing these videos and much more in the coming year, and I hope you'll be part of the conversation. And if you're discovering the YouTube channel without having heard an episode of The Candid Frame, well, go to thecandidframe.com, where we have over 200 episodes of interviews with some of the world's best established and emerging photographers. And I think you'll enjoy the conversations as much as you'll enjoy the photographs of these people. All right. Thanks again for joining me, and I'll see you next time.